Welcome to the root of all success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs unlocked success and how their stories can help you do the same. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason has built multi-million-dollar businesses that have been featured in Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. His life's mission now is helping entrepreneurs live what he calls #the exit lifestyle. Introducing TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, author, entrepreneur, cigar aficionado, motorcycle enthusiast, and host of The Root of All Success, the real Jason Duncan. The real Jason Duncan.
Hey there, welcome to a very special episode of The Root of All Success with me, the real Jason Duncan. You can call me JD. I'm here today doing a solo show, and because I've got a few things I want to talk about. I've got a couple of one major announcement that I want to go over with you as my listeners, and then I also want to give you a little tip on something. I just recorded another episode, and with that guest, we were talking about something, and I thought, you know what? I probably should just do a brief episode on that concept alone. So today, it's just you and me. So sit back and relax, take your walk, go do your exercise, driving your truck, whatever it is that you're doing right now, and let's just talk for a few minutes. It's not going to be as long an episode as normal, so this will be a little bit shorter than typical. So first of all, I want to do a special announcement. For the last year or so, I have been working on a project. I made the decision to start this project in January of 2022 when I was on a trip to Destin, Florida for an event, and had a call with a publisher and a marketing company while I was there on that trip, and made the decision to pull the trigger to write a book. Now, I've written several ebooks in the past, but I've never written a quote unquote real book. And so I made that decision last year in January. My goal was to have that thing written and released by April of 2022. Well, for those of you keeping score, it is now March of 2023, and my book just came out. But I'm really happy to announce that Exit Without Exiting has now hit the shelves. You can see Exit Without Exiting on Amazon.com. You can get it right there. And I spent a lot of time, as you might imagine, writing that book. It took me a long time. And really, the idea behind the book is how to exit your business without selling it so that you can begin living the exit lifestyle sooner than you ever thought possible. And for me, that's part of my story. I was able to exit a very successful business without selling it. And after I did that, I didn't know what in the world I was going to do with my life. I had no idea. I didn't exit for the intent to become a podcaster, or the exit for the intent to become a business coach or a public speaker or an author for that matter. I just exited because I knew that for some reason, I knew that God put me on this planet for something else other than to run the daily operations of a lighting and electrical contracting company. I didn't know what that was going to be. And so when I left that company, it was about 4 months when I left the day-to-day operations, rather. To this day, I still own the company. But I left not knowing what I was going to do next. And it took me about 4 months of going through what I consider to be an identity crisis before I realized that I need to leverage my gifts of teaching and leadership to help other people pursue their purpose in life and to get the results they want out of life, which is now my mission on earth. And so when I figured that out, it just became clear to me that as other people were asking me questions like, Jason, how did you do that? How did you exit your business without selling it? I don't understand that. Tell me what that means. And I started sharing it with people, and that turned into a full-fledged coaching business. And now I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs do what I'm doing or to accomplish that. And through this book, Exit Without Exiting, I hope to help perhaps even millions of people be able to do that. And so I want to invite you to go check it out. I'm going to give you just a quick synopsis of what the book is, and the reason it took me so long to write it is because at first it was just going to be a teaching book. I was going to show you, this is what you do. These are the 4 core principles, blah, blah, blah. But as I got about 6 or 8 months into that process, it occurred to me that I wouldn't read that book. I wouldn't read that book because it's just teaching, and that wasn't what I was interested in. I wanted to make it a book that I would want to read. So what I did is I created stories. And so I'm telling the story of 3 specific characters. The first one, his name is Edward. The second is Cheryl. And the third is James. And I'm going to tell you here on the podcast today a little bit about their stories. And then once I tell their stories, I'm going to shift into giving you a little bit, some information, and then we'll be done. So the first of all is Edward. Edward, the story I tell about Edward is that He built a pretty successful business over the past decade, yet found himself wanting out, not really truly fulfilled in what he was doing, knew he probably wasn't living in his purpose, but didn't know what to do next. And so he decided to sell. But because he had built the business revolved around him, where everything went over him or over his desk for him to make those decisions, his business really wasn't worth anything. And the only buyer that he could find was a buyer who was interested in Jane and Edward rather staying for the next 3 years to make sure that the business would be profitable. So he was involved in what we call an earnout. An earnout is when you sell the company to a third party, but you have to stay in the business for a certain period of time. It could be a couple of years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, but he had to earn out over 3 years before he was able to exit. And the only way he would get the second half of the money that the buyers promised him was if they had certain financial metrics during those 3 years that he was performing the earnout. And Edward rather lived with a lot of regret because of the time that he missed with his kids and his wife during those 10 years of building that company. And for what? Just to get an earnout? The second story I tell is about Cheryl, and I tell her story as a stay-at-home mom who stumbled into entrepreneurship and built a multi-million-dollar business from her kitchen table.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur, I know that you have to deal with sales on a regular basis. I mean, every entrepreneur does. And if you aren't paying attention to sales as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be an entrepreneur for very long. But I've got a sponsor of this show called Dub that helps you bring the personal back to sales. If you want to figure out how to improve content creation, improve client trust, improve your sales process, decrease the sales cycle, because we all know time kills deals. If you want to increase client bookings and increase conversions, you need to take a look at Dub. There's a special offer for Dub for listeners to The Root of All Success at therealjasonduncan.com/Dub, and that's DUBB. I've been using this for years. I'm a huge fan, and I'm so honored that they're our primary sponsor of the podcast. But they have helped over 60,000 businesses around the world communicate better, to make sales easier, to make sales more personal. And Dub is built for growing teams. I mean, you can set up video emails, you can set up custom onboarding, you can do admin reporting, anything you need around video and sales and automation. Dub is there. You can try Dub now. Your conversions to sales are waiting. All you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. And there you're going to get 2 weeks for free to try Dub. Plus, you're going to get 50% off your first 2 months of Dub. You can't beat that. So go check it out. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. 40 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had your business in the Yellow Pages. You remember those things? And 30 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had a door-to-door salesman. 20 years ago, you weren't in business unless you had a website. And today, you're not in business unless you're doing social media content. Am I right? Social media content. Social media content in the form of like micro content, which is 30 to 60 second spots on Instagram Reels or TikTok or YouTube Shorts. That's the way business is done. As a matter of fact, that may be how you found out about this podcast or me as a business coach. This medium that we're using today to communicate what we do is vitally important. And just recording yourself isn't enough. You've got to do it right. And my friends over at Story do it right. And one of the problems with doing it wrong is that you sit around thinking, well, what the heck am I going to record? What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? Like, I don't know what to talk about. Well, Story takes all of that away from you. Stop wasting time trying to come up with content, because Story will send you a video prompt on what to record. You can pick the categories you want to record in, whether it's real estate, entrepreneurship, finance, relationship, leadership, life insurance. It could be anything. Don't waste time on that. And by the way, if you're not confident in talking on video, or if the video editing portion takes up way too much of your time, Story will edit the videos to perform well on social media. They add the subtitles, the pop-ups, the zoom cuts. They remove all the filler words like and. They remove the awkward pauses. And then they take that video and post it for you. They write the captions, they add the relevant hashtags, and they post it on the platforms that you care about the most. It's exactly what you need to be in business today and to be successful at it. So if you want to learn how to do social media the way the influencers do, you need to go to therealjasonduncan.com/story. And that's story with 2 Y's. Why? Because they're awesome. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/story. That's STORYY for 10% off your first 3 months to try Story out. You're going to thank me later.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
She spent 10 years building that business, and it became extremely successful. And a venture capital firm came in and offered her what we refer to in the industry as the FU money, like the money that you can now tell everybody, I don't say that phrase, but the FU, you could tell you're done. You don't ever have to work again. You're financially independent. And the reality is only 2% of entrepreneurs ever experience a life-changing amount of money upon the sale of a business. Most do not. The stories you hear about people doing that are the exception to the rule. 500,000 businesses close in the United States every year, not sold, close. 75% of businesses that list for sale never sell. So Cheryl is an anomaly. And I tell her story and how she's sitting at that closing table about to get a check that will change her life and generations of her family forever, and has the regrets of missing her daughter's dance recitals and her son's football games because she worked too much. And then I tell the final story about James. And James is the entrepreneur who, when he started the business, understood that he didn't want the business to revolve around him. And he is the guy who set up delegation early on, and he eliminated stress from the business, and he established the right systems and processes. And then he made sure to invest in his people correctly. And because he did that, only 5 years into his business, he was no longer required in the daily operations. His company was paying him a very healthy salary, and he had all the free time in the world. I tell a story at the very end of that book about James's young son talking to his wife at bedtime, saying that he wanted to be an entrepreneur when he grows up. And when his mom said, "Well, why is that, baby?" He said, "Because entrepreneurs get to spend all their time at home with their family. Employees don't." Now, I want you to think about the juxtaposition between what James's reality was when he did the exit without exiting plan, which is what my book is all about, versus Cheryl, who did what everybody wants to do, but almost nobody gets to do. And then Edward, who experienced an earnout. Which one do you want to be? Go pick up my book. It's called Exit Without Exiting. You can go to therealjasonduncan.com/book and get information about that. Therealjasonduncan.com/book. And you can get information on that book and all the other resources that I've got available for you. And I want to finish with this. I want to share with you a law of the universe. It's kind of one of these universal laws that we don't really know much about, don't talk much about, but it nevertheless is a law. It's very much like gravity. Gravity has been a law since the beginning of time, but we didn't really realize it until Isaac Newton explained it to us. So today, maybe the first time I'm going to be explaining this law to you. You've never heard it before, but the law of the architect is what I want to talk about just briefly here in just the next few minutes. The law of the architect is a law that helps govern what we as entrepreneurs and founders must experience, and the law that we must live by in order to experience success. So if you think about it, the architect is the one who designs the business. We're not talking about architect in the technical term, one who designs a building. We're talking about the architect of a business, the one who designs the business. And the architect of the business is the founder. He or she is the architect of the business. There are 3 roles that the architect of a business should abide by and fulfill. And that's it. What are those 3 roles? Number 1, set the vision. It is the founder's responsibility, the architect's responsibility to set the vision for the company. Where are we going? What do we envision ourselves to be at some point in the future? The second thing that the architect is supposed to do, primary function, primary role, is that he or she is supposed to communicate that vision, to make sure that not only is it clear in his or her head, but that it's communicated with clarity to everyone on the team, so that they're all moving in the same direction. The third primary role of the founder, of the architect, is to build the asset. The asset of your company is what is worth something. It is the sellable thing, and you're not sellable. If you are the primary asset of your company, then you're doing it wrong. You see, in Exit Without Exiting, I tell this story about Edward and about Cheryl and about James. I tell their three stories, and only one lived by the law of the architect. The other two broke the law and suffered the consequences. And you might be thinking, well, yeah, it sounds like Cheryl's story turned out great. She's got $100 million to go do with what she wants for the rest of her life. Yeah, but at the end of your life, do you really want money or do you want more time with your family? The time you're wasting, and I said that on purpose, the time you're wasting running your company every day is time you don't get back. It never comes back. It is a non-renewable resource. And if you break the law of the architect by doing things other than setting the vision, communicating the vision, and building the asset, when you're breaking the law of the architect by pushing the rocks around in your business, by pushing the papers, by doing the sales, by doing the whatever the technical stuff it is, but if you're the person doing that, if you're scooping the ice cream, if you're sweeping the sidewalks, if you're taking out the trash, that is not your role as the founder of the business. That is not your role as an entrepreneur. You have three jobs: set the vision, communicate the vision, build the asset. If you're struggling with that and that's something that you want help with, I'm a business coach and I help entrepreneurs just like you live the exit lifestyle now without waiting for some imaginary date in the future. If that's something that you want help with, I invite you to just send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn and just say, hey, I heard you on your podcast. I want to know, how can you help me? And I could do private one-on-one coaching. I don't normally talk about this on the show, but I'm going to take the opportunity right now. Private coaching, where we can do one-on-one. We can do a 3-month or a 6-month engagement, where I can get you to a place where you can get ready to begin exiting. I've got an Exeter Club mastermind that's right now is for men only. And it's an amazing experience of guys who get together and figure out what their next step is to get themselves extricated from the daily operations of the business. And we're watching that happen. And it's so phenomenal to watch these guys grow and their families enjoy their presence at home more. I also have group coaching programs and online courses. I've got an online course called the 10-Hour Entrepreneur, and it's a 10-week course that you can take that will take you exactly to the place of being able to exit without exiting. And my most recent course that I launched is called the 40 Days to Find Your True Purpose. So if you're struggling with understanding what your purpose is, maybe you're successful, you still don't feel fulfilled, that's what that group coaching program is for. It's 6 weeks live with me, and you can go to therealjasonduncan.com/purpose to read more. I hope today's show has been helpful, give you a little bit of information. And again, I will really invite you to go check out Exit Without Exiting. You can get it on Amazon. Make sure you leave a 5-star review, buy a couple hundred copies of it, give it to your closest friends. It's been a labor of love for mine over the last year or so, and it's exciting to see it finally out on the shelves. So thank you for doing that. So go to therealjasonduncan.com/book to read more. Make sure you tune in again next time when I talk with another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, I am the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. Are you an entrepreneur who feels trapped in the weeds of daily operations, not experiencing the freedom you thought you'd have as a business owner? Want to know the way out? Take Jason's free exit readiness assessment to see how close you are to getting ready to experience true freedom and success as an entrepreneur. Go to amireadytoexit.com today. That's amireadytoexit.com. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.